Hello and welcome, my name is Kaczmar and you are watching Geek Factor. Today I'll be talking to you about a game called BLIGHT CHRONICLES Agent DECKER. Now BLIGHT CHRONICLES Agent DECKER is a game that is about to go on Kickstarter. The exact date is April 26th. Now if you're watching this after April 26th, then I'll provide a link to the campaign in the description below. Before that, if I post the video before that, then obviously the link won't be there. Now, this prototype was provided to me by Board&Dice, a Polish publisher, so thank you for that. Now, before we get into the specifics into the gameplay, into what I think about the game, let me tell you some history. Now, this is not the first incarnation of Agent DECKER. Some time ago, a man named by the name of Manuel Correa, a very talented game designer, decided to enter a contest where he wanted to design a solo game. Now, the game that came out from that contest from him was Agent DECKER. It was never really on sale. It was, however, made available for print and play, and if I'm not mistaken, it was printed and it was downloaded, printed, and presumably played over 10,000 times. So that's quite a number. That's if you have a game on sale, and if you sell 10,000 copies of that game, that is considered a success. That is considered a well-sold game. Obviously, depending on the region in the world, but for example, in Poland, that would be a huge success. Now, after that, the Board&Dice publishing company, they decided they wanted to publish a game based on that mechanic, but with a more familiar theme. And that's how we got Superhot, the card game. A great game, one of my favorite games of the previous year, which is basically based on the mechanic of Agent DECKER. But then they decided they were not enough. It was not enough for them. So what they wanted to do is they decided to add something a little bit extra into Agent DECKER, into the original design. And then Manuel Correa, again, but this time combined with Matt Dembeck, a dear friend of mine, they decided to make this game better. They decided to work on it, to expand it, to develop it, to let it evolve. And now we've got BLIGHT CHRONICLES Agent DECKER. So that's a little bit of history to you. Now, how it compares to Superhot, I won't be able to compare it to the original Agent DECKER because I haven't played that one, but I will be able to compare it to Superhot, and I will tell you a little bit more, but first let's get into the gameplay, how the game plays. I will not give you a proper how to play video, but a very detailed explanation of how the game works, but I will give you a general good idea of what the gameplay is like. So now let's get to the table, and then let's come back up and I'll tell you what I think. So the first thing you do is you set up the board in the middle of the table. Then you pick a mission. For that mission, you take the appropriate stage cards. You have a number of stage cards. You pick the one that says stage 1 and you put it right here next to the bottom right corner of the board. You set the other stage cards aside for now. Now you make sure you put the proper face up. This is the face up. This is the side up you use when you're placing the stage card here for the first time. The things in the back you will resolve after you've completed or failed the mission. After you've chosen the mission, you also take a mission card and you place it right here at the top, and you place a marker at the very top stage of the mission card, because this will indicate that you are going through the very first stage. So that's obvious. Once you complete the first stage, you will move on to the next stage, and then you will advance on this track. You then take a look at your stage card and you take a look at the icons you see here, and you take the obstacle cards that have the icons that match those found on the stage card. So for example, we take this deck, and this deck of obstacle cards. You also see if there are any special preparation or setup rules you have to follow. For example, in this one, we have to put the guardhouse right here on the first mark spot. You take the other cards with the appropriate icons, of course, and you shuffle them to create a single obstacle deck that you place right here above the board. You take all the other obstacle cards with icons that do not match the ones found on the currently played through stage card, and you put those in the box. You also put this marker on the 0 mark on the suspicion track. you take a look at the starting visibility that's specified right here on the stage card, and you place the appropriate token on the visibility track. And then you place all the other tokens that you might need during the game somewhere nearby. Whenever the time comes for you to use those, you will be instructed to by the game. You also take all your cards that says Agent Decker starting, which is the starting deck. You shuffle it and you place it right here on the Agent deck spot. The game is played through a series of rounds. Each round is divided into 5 phases. Now, the number of rounds is unspecified because you play until you've completed the mission or failed the mission. You fail the mission if you meet these conditions. They are always written right here on the stage card. For example, in this case, if you ever reach the suspicion level of 15 or more, you have failed the mission. In order to complete the mission successfully, you have to meet the objective. For example, you have to discard this amount, you will see what that is in a second, to jump over the fence basically. So this stage is all about getting into the compound. But before you do that, you also have to collect 1 accomplishment token, which is shown right here in the parentheses. So what you do is there are ways during the game to gain accomplishment tokens, and those vary from scenario to scenario. For example, here we have this guardhouse card that shows once you eliminate it, you gain 1 accomplishment token. So once you've completed that, you can place it right here where it belongs in this dedicated spot on the stage card. So after you've collected an appropriate amount of accomplishment tokens, you can then continue to perform the objective action in order to complete the mission. So before we get into the specifics of how you play through a game of BLIGHT Chronicles Agent Decker, let's talk about the cards for a second. Because those are the cards you're gonna begin the game with. Those are your Agent Decker cards. These are the obstacle cards that will wind up in your deck, probably, most likely, and then you will be able to use. First, they will be obstacles, something that you will have to deal with, but then once you deal with them in a certain way, you will be able to put them in your deck and make good use of them. So, first thing you have to notice is these 2 icons. This triangle indicates physical points. This one indicates evasion points. Now, whenever you have an obstacle card, I will show you how that works in just a second, but for now, all you have to know is when the card is an obstacle, you have to deal with what's right here at the bottom of that card. When the card is an obstacle, when it's on the board, you ignore what is up here. However, in order to deal with a card, you have to target it. Now, in order to target it, you have to spend points equal to the amount shown here. The icon here also shows what type of points you have to spend in order to target this card. For example, if you want to target this card, you have to spend a total of 3 physical points. Sometimes cards will give you an option or a mix of those 2 abilities, right? Physical or evasion. Now when you want to target this card, you have to spend a total amount of 4, but this can be a combination of both evasion and power and physical points. Once those cards go into your deck and they then go into your hand, once you play them, you gain the physical or evasion points that you see printed right here on the top of the card. Once those cards are in your deck, in your hand, you ignore what is on the bottom. You only care about what is on the top. Okay, also as well, at the final part of the setup, what you have to do is you have to fill up every slot right here on the board and above the board. So we can start with slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then you take the amount of cards into your hand that is equal to your current hand size. Mission card says that right now your hand size is 4. So you take 4 cards into your hand. And for this round, your hand size will continue to be 4. You place those cards in front of you. Another useful information. Once you play the game, you will be targeting cards. You have to understand that the only cards you can target are those that are in sight. The cards that are in sight are those that are in the slots 1 through 6 and on the mark slots right here on the board. So those cards are considered to be in sight. Also, whenever you reveal a card and it says right here, reveal, and there's a text, you have to resolve the text immediately and then continue revealing other cards. So now let's move on to the gameplay. Like I said, the game is played for a series of rounds until the conditions for either success or failure of the mission are met. So what happens is, the first phase of any round is engage. In that phase, what you do is you play cards from your hand, and then you choose in which order you want to play them, and you place them right here in your play area. Once you've done that, you activate any abilities of the played card. You resolve them immediately if you choose to. That is entirely your choice. Once you've done that, any cards that are remaining, because for example sometimes you will have to discard a card, so for example you play 4 cards but 1 will be discarded, for example, and so only 3 will remain in the play area. But then you count up the points you have on them. You count up the evasion points, you count up the physical points. So once you've done that, you can target obstacle cards. Like I said, you can target cards within sight. So those obstacle cards right here and right here on the mark slots. Now the way you do that is, like I've said, you take a look at the cost, how much it costs to target a specific card. Once you've met that cost, you have 2 options. You can either eliminate a card or you can knock it out. When you knock it out, you simply flip it face up. When you eliminate it, you take it and you place it in your agent discard pile. As you can imagine, the cards from your discard pile will eventually form a new deck and will eventually wind up in your hand. Now, every time you eliminate a card, some of the cards will have text that says eliminate. So once you've eliminated it, you have to resolve this text. An important thing to make note of here is that when you choose to eliminate a card, you can, as you can see, you can spend a combination of points here to target this card, for example. If you want to eliminate it, you have to use at least 1 physical point. You cannot eliminate cards with pure evasion. You have to use some physicality. That's actually pretty thematic, so it's easy to remember. Now, why you would want to knock out and not eliminate the cards, I will tell you in just a second. When you knock out a card, this card no longer matters. You no longer do anything with that card. And this card will never ever land in your deck. So why you would want to do that, I will tell you in a second. After you've done that, after you've played your cards and you've targeted some cards and you've eliminated them or you knocked them out, you move over to the reorganize phase, where you take your deck and you draw up back to your hand's limit. Whenever that happens and you run out of cards in your deck, you reshuffle what's in your discard pile and you form a new deck. All those cards obviously from the play area go to your discard pile. So now you have a new hand, but you're not playing it yet because you're still going through the phases of that round. Another phase is avoid. Now what happens is, one of those 2 cards here on slot 1 and on slot 2 will be avoided, which means they will come at you and you'll have to find some way to avoid them. Now what happens is, when there are 2 cards and both of them are face up, the card on the slot 1 will be avoided. And by that I mean, we will move it to the avoided obstacles pile, and then you will raise your suspicion by the value shown right here in the bottom right corner. So for example, in this case, we would raise the suspicion by 2. So that's what happens when you have 2 cards here. Never mind if they are face up or face down. Now, if one of those cards is face up and one is face down, you choose which one you want to avoid. So for example, you want to avoid the face down card. You move it, still face down, to the avoided obstacle deck, but you do not raise your suspicion. Now, if there is only 1 card right here, because for example, you've eliminated the other card, you have to avoid this one. And if it's face up, you avoid it face up and then you raise your suspicion. If it's face down, you avoid it face down and you don't raise the suspicion. So as you can see, this is what happens. When you avoid a card that is face down, nothing happens. When you avoid a card that is face up, you raise your suspicion. So while eliminating cards is good because you get to place them in your deck, knocking them out is also good because once those cards are avoided, they do not raise your suspicion. And for example, in this mission, it is particularly important because Getting to 15 suspicion is how you lose the game. So basically knocking out cards allows you to buy more time. So after you've done the avoid phase, we move on to the move phase. Every card moves one step closer to the number 1 slot. So we make sure that everything is moved closer to the slot 1. Then we do the look around phase, which is basically revealing new obstacle decks right here. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, if you want to target cards that are here in the slots 1 or 2 or on the mark slots, you can simply target them spending the points shown on those cards. But here, those cards are considered to be further away from you. So in order to target any of those cards, you have to spend extra evasion points. You have to spend 1 extra evasion point if you want to target cards in the slot 3 and 4, and you have to spend 2 extra evasion points if you want to target cards in slot 5 and 6. Don't worry, in the final product there will be icons here showing 2 evasion points and 1 evasion point in order to memorize them. Those are simply not present here on the prototype that I've received. Sometimes you will be called upon to raise your visibility. Once you've reached the maximum level of visibility, which is 4, and then you're asked to raise your visibility, every time you're asked to raise your visibility and you're already at level 4, you simply raise your suspicion instead. Some cards you will target are equipment cards. Equipment cards have those icons right here, and as you can see, you have specific spots for them below the board. If you want to get those cards, and you can, whenever you target those cards and you eliminate them, you can immediately place them right here below the board in order to use their abilities. Now, as you can see, there is only 1 spot for clothing and 2 spots for hands. So whenever you have cards already in those spots and you get some new ones, then you have to obviously discard the ones that are already there. And that's basically how you play. You play cards from your hand, you spend the points to target cards, you eliminate them or you knock them out, then those cards move closer to you. All that to complete the objectives, to gain those accomplishment tokens, and then to finish the mission. Once you completed the mission, you flip the side up and then you read what is here. Then usually you will have a choice what you want to do next. And depending on that choice, you will then resolve other stage cards. Now you can play another stage immediately, or you can just play 1 game at a time and then save your progress in between games. How do you save your progress? Whenever a game finishes, you take what is remaining on the board, for example, all the cards in obstacle deck, all the obstacle cards on the slots, all the obstacle cards in the avoided obstacle pile, all those cards are returned to the box. But every card in your discard pile or in your play area or in your hand, they remain yours for future plays. So make sure you put those in the box if you want to save your game separately in a Ziploc bag, for example. And that's it. That's basically all you need to know to see how to play through a game of Blight Chronicles Agent Decker. Let's get back up and let me tell you what I think about it. Now I know that maybe it was a bit longer than I anticipated, so I will provide a description in the description and index of where can you find the introduction, where is the how to play, where is the gameplay overview, and then where are my final thoughts. Now my final thoughts about this game. First of all, this is a solo game. Okay, so this is one thing you have to take into account. I know there are a lot of people who don't like solo games. I love solo games. I love, maybe that's an exaggeration, but what I mean to say by that is I'm one of those people who love board gaming so much that every now and again I will get into a phase, into a place in my mind where I'm like, if I don't play something within the next hour, I am going to do something illegal, something wrong and something illegal. I am sure of it. I get into spaces like that sometimes. Maybe a bit scary, but true. And what I do then is for example, I'm either home alone, or my wife is not in the mood for playing any board games, or I'm somewhere else. What I can do then is take out any of the games that we have in our collections that have a solo variant or are strictly made for solo playing, and play those. And those are great for me. Those things happen to me. I find in those times where I sit down, there's nothing around me, I don't care about anything, I have the game in front of me, I find those times very relaxing. So if you're like that, great. If not, well, this is probably not for you. This is, if you don't like solo games, if you don't like playing solo, then this is probably not for you. But if you do like solo games, but more on that later. Now, component quality and artwork. Obviously, I can't talk too much about component quality because this is a prototype. Also, another thing, I forgot to make a caveat before the rules explanation. This is a prototype, so some things might change. I know that the layout on some of the cards, not the illustrations, but the layout will change somewhat to make it more clear, I would say. And well, the way the artwork looks, I don't love it, but I like it. I think it's cool. I think it's got a cool vibe. It brings out the theme of the game. It might be a bit more what's the best way to put it? Not as grown up as I generally tend to like in those types of games and those types of stories. Okay, so when I'm thinking about spying, you know, those espionage movies and those type of affairs, I usually prefer more mature, more grown up approach. This is just me. So the artwork here it's fine. It looks nice. It is maybe not of the sort that I generally prefer. I like it. I think it's very good. I think it's very clear, and it does deliver what the authors want to deliver. It's maybe not just up my alley personally. Now, so that's about that. Like I said, I can't really talk about much about anything else because this is still a prototype. But I know the publisher. I know I've worked with them. I know their approach. I know their how much thoughts and how much dedication they put into developing their games, into their detail of developing their games. So I'm pretty sure that they will put that effort and maybe even more to making sure that this is the best possible version you can have of any game. And I think that, and I don't think they will disappoint. And even now, already at a prototype stage, it looks pretty good, pretty good. Okay, let's get into the gameplay, what I think about the game itself. Now, let's get this out of the way. The mechanics of the game, of those games, are very similar, which makes sense given that one is based on the other. So if you approach a game and you only care about mechanics, then if you already have Super Hot, then Blight might not offer anything too new for you. There are some new cool ideas. I really like the avoid bid. This is really cool because the avoid bid leads to some of the toughest, most challenging decisions you have to make in the game. And whenever a game is making me do tough, challenging decisions, I love it. So that's kind of new, and I think that's. But I don't know if it will be enough to convince you. So if you only care about mechanics, then and you already have this one, and you don't feel like then you don't feel like the need to own anything quite like it, then maybe Agent Decker might not be for you. But please give it a chance, because this is a very good game. This is a very good game on its own, and even so much so that I will put this aside. I will not mention Super Hot throughout the rest of the review. I hope it's out of the shot. Now, like I said, the mechanics might be similar, might be very similar, but the story element is so important. It was important in Super Hot. I thought the theme came through in Super Hot very well, very strongly, but it comes even more strongly in this one. And because the theme comes so strongly in both those games, the gameplay, as a result, feels a lot different. That's just my approach. Okay, I get the points, and I have to do those points to get rid of this card, but I'm actually thinking about the theme. I'm thinking about being the agent that has to avoid this camera, that has to avoid this guard, that has to knock out, eliminate someone or something. I'm actually into the story, so much so that it actually feels like a completely different game. Even though, like I said, on a purely mechanical level, it's very, very similar. So that's a major strength of that game. I love that so much effort and so much thought from Matt Dembeck and Manuel Correa went into designing a great story. I like the story. I find the story very interesting. Basically what they said, the first time I was shown this was PortalCon in January, and Matt was kind enough to show me a prototype version. It didn't look quite as good as here, but he told me the story. I started playing, I finished the first stage, and he was like, okay, well now you understand what the game is like. And I was like, but I kind of want to, I don't really have the time, but I kind of want to keep playing, not because well, obviously I like the game, but not because I want to keep playing, not because I like the game, but because I am invested in this story. I want to know more about Agent DECKER. I want to know more about Blight. I want to know more what is going on. So whenever a game pulls you in like that, that is awesome. And on top of that, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It is a very tense, very tight, I would say 30, 40 if you're a real thinker type person. But it takes like 30 minutes really. Once you get going, once you get familiar with the rules enough, it's about 30 minutes per play. So it's very tight, it's very dense, it's very tense. You feel the tension. Like I said, the avoid mechanic, it's brilliant. It works. It does what it's supposed to do in a magnificent way. This was a truly great idea. Now everything makes, like I said, the mechanics are tight and it makes sense thematically. I am invested in this story. And I really have all those tough decisions that I have to make, those challenging decisions that, like I said, I love about games. Now, that's the strongest recommendation I can give to this game. Like I said, you have to accept the fact that this is a solo game. If you're not into those, then this is not for you. But if you are into solo games, check this one out, because this will be right up your alley. Clever mechanics, interesting story, and, well, maybe not for me, but probably for a lot of people, a very cool, very nice looking design. Well, it is a nice looking design for me still, but like I said, not my preferred type of artwork went to this one. So this is a strong recommendation for me. Now recently at Geek Factor we've changed our attitude towards rating prototypes. We've decided not to give ratings to prototypes. Like, I'm not gonna say to you it's 8 out of 10 or it's 9 out of 10, because I know how prototypes work, and I know that a lot of those things can change. I also don't know how well the campaign will do, what are the stretch goals. I don't know how much more will be put into this game, because, for example, so much more stuff can be put into this box as a result of a good Kickstarter campaign, that this would elevate this game even more for me. So I know changes can be made, probably will be made, so I don't want to give a rating. What I want to do is I want to recommend it. Really, you saw what the gameplay looks like in my general overview of the rules. You know that this is a very heavily story-driven game with some cool, intense decisions to make during the game. So, and this game is a challenge. It is not as big of a challenge as Superhot, because I actually was able to complete those stages. I was not able to complete all. I rarely complete a stage in Superhot. So it is challenging, but it's not too challenging. So it's challenging, but it's not. You don't get disheartened, basically. When you play a game sometimes and it is a challenge and you start losing and you lose. Ghost Stories is a popular, difficult game that for me is just. Sorry, it's too much. It's too hard. I get disheartened every time I lose. I don't want to play it anymore. With this one, I do want to play it. I've lost. It's challenging, but it's not disheartening. That is what I wanted to say. So, a strong recommendation from me. Check out the campaign, and if there is going to be so much stuff, there are going to be more missions than the one we have in the prototype. So a lot more stuff to look forward to. I know I will be paying close attention to the Kickstarter campaign, because I'm just curious about all the stuff that can appear here, because this game really has the potential to be something special, and I really hope it comes into fruition. Like I said, strong recommendation from Geek Factor, and that's it. Thank you to Board&Dice for providing us with a prototype. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions about the rules or about the game, do not hesitate to ask them in the comments below. I will gladly answer them as soon as I have a chance. Thank you, and I hope I see you soon. Bye-bye.